Okay.
Google Doc again.
Yep. Did you make any? You didn't make any changes to the Google Doc for R10
No,
after we committed last night, right?
that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Shall I just reuse this doc and just blank it?
Yeah, may as well.
All right. Have you? Hmm. I noticed that you write a lot of requests and you haven't really written any ideas.
Yes.
Whereas I've written several ideas and not many requests.
Well, I've written idea 11 twice now, but other than that, I think none's got across. So there aren't that many ideas in there.
No, that's funny. Like I think that's just sort of naturally where we've sort of found our affinity, right? Like
Yeah.
I kind of like have idea. I'm like I know how to do this thing. I don't know where it fits, but and then you're kind of much more tied to the request side of things. It seems.
Yeah.
So don't know. I don't know how to go about this.
Well, let's have a look at your example 07. Now, I'll do it in the site. Oh, this is an interesting one, isn't it? I honestly don't know how to write it in another way, but I know exactly what you're saying about I07. I07 doesn't have a request attached to it,
No,
and you could pick this up and
and you could do it.
you could do
Like
it.
you could
Yeah.
you could implement it and you could deliver on the asset, and then what it was supposed to target was R2.
Yep.
In a way, it was really targeted at R2, but it's not even like a complete set of what R2 does. And then I6 again is sloppy and unfinished. However, it's sort of like it's not going through a checklist of things in any request. It's stating some things that it can do and how it all ties together in different areas of it. Like for me to build it, like I, it might just be the way I think,
Mm-hmm.
but I would struggle to build from I11. Like it feels very prescriptive, like it's telling me what to do without really like it's not a solution to a problem. It's just sort of telling me, limiting what I have to do rather than suggesting something novel, right? And the curse of a requester is that they can't help but have some elements of solutioneering in what they're asking, or some preconceptions. And by decoupling the idea format from the request format, you allow allow the requester to be pleasantly surprised by someone suggesting something that may actually not fit all their checklist, but can say, look, your checklist is wrong, because we can make this particular thing and it will stand on its own and it will do these other great things. How sure are you that all those things in your request really need to be there?
Yeah, I agree with all this. The thing I'm struggling with is in this specific request idea, maybe it's because we came so close on writing the request, but having a higher level reusable idea, I think, is right. In this situation, I'm not sure how that fits, or what else you'd say that wouldn't be a repetition of what we've got in the request.
My sloppy attempt at it was I5. But that's not really a solution, because that's sort of like, that's not a solution either.
No.
And maybe the curse, or maybe the problem is that we think we've already solved this problem, and we're trying to retrofit it back into an idea.
Yeah.
But this is I'm not trying to rag on you about, like, I want to solve this general overall problem, but see, I wrote R4, the securities guardian, and then you suggested I4, and it's, again, you sort of replied to the request. And I mean,
maybe start with right. Let's go back to I7. We kind of do have an idea in mind for this, so we are kind of retrofitting stuff, but that's okay at this stage.
you think it would make it easier.
Yeah, exactly. So how about we write or try to get some words around the structure that you've done in I07. So, for example, even the concept. What's the concept of this idea? Before we go into propose or post.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good way to tackle it. So I just. So it was called I11 Requeest-Idea. We've got the target.
Yeah.
Where it targets R10.
Messing.
Sorry?
He's messing with you.
Yeah. Fuck it. Piece of shit. We've got the target, we've got the dependencies, proposed approach. So we use the heading concept.
a general.
Like it could also be that we've put too much solution in the request, and we should actually pull some of that down into here.
That's possible. We did go to great lengths to avoid putting any solution in there.
Yeah, but we did stick. Well, I guess we did restrict the solution to be a website, to use Git, to use Markdown,
Yeah.
things like that. You know, it might also be so simple that the request is like, the idea is just like, I'm just gonna do some stuff using the tools you gave me, and then off we go.
Let's see. In R10, we've got the strategic intent, which is absolutely fine.
I like that. I thought that strategic intent was good.
Yeah. And now then we're going to tactical intent. Define what a request and an idea is. So we've jumped from how do you catch a dream and why you need to catch a dream into, well, you obviously need a request and an idea in order to make a dream. Oh, this is hard, isn't it? Maybe we have put doing too prescriptive, because things like yeah, that's I think what we've done. So tactical intent 1 must handle staking of virtual money against requests and ideas, for example. That's not a pure sub idea, as it were. A pure problem, as it was. Define a request and an idea is not a pure problem.
Yeah, but the request starts restricting the solution space to be around using requests and ideas. I mean, it could just be as simple as saying, how about this for a definition? You know, like it just actually...
What do you mean? As a...
Well, we modify the dictionary, and then as part of the asset that's produced from I11, we're like, are these definitions okay? Because...
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like I don't think the idea needs to go into steps. Like step 1, I will implement the dictionary definition of request. It's kind of trying to say that, you know, the idea implementers are intelligent people, and they do get that, okay, the request puts some boundaries on what can be done. They were, we think, well thought out, and the requesters are trying to give us freedom to implement how we like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you and I have got a system here working in Markdown that we sort of like. All we got to do is reverse engineer the description of what it does, how it works, and all that into an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that's passable by QA. And then, like, the next day, the first iteration comes through. But
so you mean like
I think
just do it, as in, because if you could,
I don't think that's acceptable as a QA submission, but surely we can describe what the system we have built already does as a pure idea. Surely.
Yeah. Well, let's give it a go.
Who are we?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is us now. Okay.
Okay, 1 second. That's much closer to what you're talking about. Let me pull something up.
Where'd that come from?
From page. Where's it go? I just deleted it. No. From R10 Tactical Intent 1. That seems to be more of what we're talking about. That also works.
Yep.
All right. So, in some of these, interesting enough, I was more talking to you in terms of stuff that we were talking about we need to do, as opposed to a lot of the other stuff, which would be how I'd run through it and make sure that what we finally submit agrees with all the tactical intent scopes in the request. So there's kind of two parts in the, and this wasn't intentional, there's two parts in the stuff that I was writing yesterday. First one is the getting my head around, okay, how do you do this? How do you make sure that what we do is going to be accepted? And there's other parts where, well, we haven't got a solution for that. So here's, a first ditch attempt at it.
Okay. I think the thing that I'm trying to separate out in I11 is the checklist from the idea.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to separate out the request from the idea because the request has fingerprinted itself throughout the structure.
Yeah.
And I think I can untangle that by adding this section on feedback to submitters. So we can say that feedback documents this might get messy in Markdown, but that's how I see the system going. Like when we appify it, the request will be filled out in, it's not freeform, it's like actual application boxes. Mm-hmm. And so that when you give feedback, it just sort of, we just go through as QA and go tick, cross, tick, cross, tick, cross, cross. Mm-hmm. And then it shows them that here's your idea submission, here's QA's appraisal against the request.
Yeah. So
sort it out.
Right. So is that a separate type of document then? That feedback document?
Yeah, it is, and I'm just questioning whether the inclusion of this would be too cumbersome within Markdown and would go against part of what the request was asking for in that.
Yeah.
Like it would be solving it's a hard problem to solve in Markdown, and it's only in Markdown that it's a problem.
Yeah. And we're increasing the complexity count.
Yeah. Well, are we?
We didn't have feedback documents before. Now we've got one.
No, we didn't, but implicitly we had feedback, right? Surely we did.
Yeah, well, the feedback.
You can't.
I don't know,
I don't think you can reasonably say that you're gonna run a QA service and give no feedback. Like you would be the worst QA ever.
Oh, yeah,
You're like,
yeah,
how about now?
No. I'm not saying that. I'm thinking about what we're doing right now in MD and Git. So if our feedback at the moment is via issues, isn't it? Really?
Yes, it is. Yep.
So why don't we just use issues in order to pick up? Now, the actual steps we've got down here, that can be down in the back pocket, just as a way for us to be a bit structured in going through that QA.
Okay, I've got an idea then.
Mm-hmm.
We could create the tactical intent as, I think you can do like, that thing in Markdown where you put an open box and it shows up as a tick or a cross, as a checkbox.
Okay, yeah.
And then, like, if the request was already written as a tickable form, then a feedback doc would just be a straight up copy of the request with different things ticked and crossed.
Yeah, probably with some kind of written comments as well, because otherwise it could be quite frustrating if there's like, well, why is that not being ticked? What have you spotted that I haven't spotted, for example?
Yeah. But then, like, I'm like, well, maybe that's just a phone call, that bit. Like...
In practice, that's how we would do it. So this is exactly what we're doing at the moment, isn't it? If you can imagine that me writing this idea is actually me submitting an idea to this process that we're writing. And this is the feedback, is this call. So we'll probably just do over a call. But that doesn't scale very well.
Thankfully, electric scale is on our side right now. Okay, well, we could ditch that concept as too complicated for Markdown, and just be like, feedback is feedback's just talking.
Actually, no. I've just talked myself back into it. Yeah, if we did have it written feedback, then we'd have a persistent asset that's linked to an idea. That, say, if the original author doesn't want to do the work, it's like, oh, sod that, I'm off. That written feedback is still there to be seen for someone else to pick up and fork that idea. So having persistent feedback on a specific request that's targeting, on a specific idea that's targeting a request from the QA for a pull, I think is quite a valuable asset to have, as opposed to just a chat where the thinking behind it might be lost. So I think you're right. A written document is required.
Okay, now does it need to be in this iteration?
No, because as I say, we can do the same thing with issues.
I've got just the thing for you. Next, well.
What was that?
When you do a pull request, there's a field for you to make a comment. Where when you create your pull request, what we could do is, when you're pull requesting an idea for completion, you copy the request into the comments field, and then the reviewer goes through and ticks the boxes in the request yes or no as part of the review process, and the documents that are generated are the pull requests. Now, they're not browsable on the website directly, but you can at least look at the pull requests in GitHub and see those that were ideas trying to get completion from QA. Mm-hmm. And you can see QA's rejection based on insufficient, like ticks or crosses or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would work.
But then there's a different problem. How do you that when you're trying to get QA to accept that an idea has been completed and it closes a request, that seems different to producing an output and asking for QA to accept that the output closes the idea. Now, does it matter? Might be the question. If you're like, we could say that, like, if you were sort of a bit cautious with your money and you pulled it only on requests, that seems a higher bar to hit than pulling it on an idea, because an idea is like sort of self-specified. You like the person implementing said what the idea was and then did the thing, and it's kind of hard to argue with them because they got to say what they were going to do and then they also delivered the thing, and so it's sort of a lot on their side that they're probably going to hit it. The important question is, does that idea satisfy the request? That's probably the more valuable thing.
What, the assets, the outputs generated by the idea being executed, does those outputs meet the request?
Those outputs satisfy the request. Yeah. And so, look, I'm really out of ideas here. So all I'm suggesting there is that the ideas don't get funding against them. Like, you can submit an idea and QA can approve the idea just for being an idea.
Yes. So escrow is only against a request then?
Look, I'm fishing for ideas. I mean,
yeah, me too.
We kind of just smacked into a wall here. I'm like, man, this fucking, like, how do you if without that strict format like a request, how do you get the ideas written in a way that you can actually determine when they got delivered or not? And so you can either go two ways, right? You can back right out of the whole problem and be like, we don't know, and nothing of consequence will come from that because we won't allow money to flow to these ideas because we can't control them. Or you go the other way and you start getting involved in, does QA think that this idea can satisfy this request?
Yeah, but that's okay, isn't it? Because there's two things could happen when you put up a request. Someone could come out of the blue and just say, I've just beavered away and I've done it, and submit that to the pool for funding against that request. The other thing would be, well...
Yes, because they can turn up with no fucking idea and then just an output, and they're like,
Right. So
do
yeah,
what are we gonna do? Like kick them out because they didn't fill in the form?
exactly. So imagine someone turns up, hey, I've had this request idea process doc sitting in my hard drive for 3 years now. I think it meets everything you want. So, I'm going to submit it to your pool as that request is done. The other way would be actually, I've not done it, or it doesn't exist. I'm not willing to spend too much time going down a rabbit hole on this one, because this concept kind of sort of, I think, meets the request, but I'd like some kind of feedback on whether you reckon it would. So there are two different things there.
Okay, so I mean, getting QA's opinion on an idea when there is no output yet. Was that what you were asking?
Yeah. In which
I think that's still valuable, and I think that QA is capable of doing that without being opinionated. Like QA can read the idea and say, don't think it'll do this, don't think it'll do that, definitely does this, like it can go through and tick all the forms.
Yeah.
Maybe give some feedback as to what is or isn't right about that.
Yeah. Because
but then the thing that's going to bubble out pretty quickly is QA is going to start demanding some, like, when is an idea insufficiently presented? Like there is a limit, right? Like someone will present something, we'll be like, dude, no, like I don't even know how to describe how you're wrong here, but I just can't even process this.
Right. Well, here's the thought. Right. This is just scratch. Up here. Right. So if someone were to write something like, for this request, look at it and say, I think you could meet most of this using a whiteboard and a webcam. And that's it. Submit that. So the question is, how do you go from there to something like this without actually having QA write the idea for them? You could just say, you could say, well, whiteboard's not going to meet what we're needing. It needs to be in Git. And then we'll come back saying, I think you could meet most of this using Git. It's like, well, yes, but need more detail.
Right, like you could write like a stupid script that just basically fed whatever QA said back into it.
All right. Yeah. And so that you'd end up with QA writing the idea. But what's the the essence of this?
So QA is a QA cost, right? Like it costs money to engage QA.
Yeah.
And it also costs you reputation, because if you submit stupid things, QA will blacklist you as a time waster.
Yeah.
At the same time, QA's reputation's on the line, because if it tosses out a good idea,
Yeah.
And I guess that's the other side of turning dust into value, is that sometimes these ideas are going to come in shitty.
Yeah.
But I think it's reasonable to say that if you want money from some strangers, which is what a pool is, a collection of strangers, then your idea has to follow some sort of a format.
It does. Because again, otherwise the QA burden is going to be too high.
Yeah. No, it was a great breakthrough when you came up with the must, should, could, and all that, because that's a great format to put a request in. Mm-hmm. But is there something similar for ideas?
I think the must, should, could, should not, must not. I don't know, actually.
I felt like, obviously it's biased because I did it and it suits my way of thinking. But I thought that I7 was something that I would be comfortable presenting to a stranger, and I'd feel like it detailed everything about the idea.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to pick a format that's reusable across different ideas.
Yeah, and also it's a much higher level idea than what we're looking for now for this.
Right. But look, maybe there are some commonalities, right? Like implementation time. I think we agreed that that belongs outside of the idea.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Like, yeah. Implementation steps. That seems like it's every idea should have that, right?
Yep. And yeah, the functionality, the list of functionality.
Functionality is a good one for apps, right? If your idea is about apps, then you need to list the actors that are going to be operating within the system, and you need to list the actions that they can take. And I don't think that's unreasonable to say here, because in the interblock blockchain model, it's made for actors and actions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think it's wrong, given that all these apps are Dreamcatcher blockchain apps. I don't think it's wrong to say you need to list the actors and the actions that each actor can do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because we have defined the structure of the solution to fit the framework that we want to see the solution on. Sure, I don't give a fuck if you're trying to do a Kubernetes solution using Python.
Yeah.
You're not coming in this pool. This is not your pool. Go make your own pool. But for us, actors and actions is a great way to understand a system.
Okay. So surely we can. Let's go get rid of this before it costs stuff. So if we were to
definitely listing the output assets, which I think you're done already.
Yeah. Yep.
Listing the outputs is a must. In fact, I would suggest that we hoist that up to the top, because it's probably it's probably
really should
the most.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of those fixed sort of things, right?
Yeah.
Now it should be that the strategic intent of the request should sufficiently describe why an idea is being done.
Yes.
And I think, as we learned, I believe the strategic intent is the hardest fucking thing to write. Of anything in this whole system that we've contemplated, strategic intent is the fucking top of the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Is it like that in the armed forces?
It is. It's the hardest one because not only have you got to think about why. The why is a kind of real world spidery thing to get right. So, what the strategic intent of invading Ukraine, for example, originally was, I think, probably to take Kiev, and that is a hugely more expensive thing. And so the why of it, I actually put in, I think, wrote a 5,000 word essay on the why he's doing this in order to give it context. But when you get to the tactical intent, it's much easier. It's far easier to break it down. So
what is the stage? What is the stage before strategic intent, when like someone like Thatcher just says something simple like retake the Falklands,
there's one above strategy, which is grand strategy. So that order to retake the Falklands was the grand strategy, and then the strategy was for example, get the force together, send it down to the South Atlantic, and then you had the kind of sub strategies of let's take South Georgia, let's take Goose Green or whatever, and then you had the tactical at that level, which is actually maneuvering your guys, saying let's take that mountaintop now. So the grand strategy in that case was at the kind of the top. It doesn't go any further up there. I mean, you could if Thatcher was writing a grand strategy, she could have said, right, we're going to retake the Falklands because it's British territory. We're in the middle of a Cold War. We don't want the Soviets thinking that we're basically a spent force, and it's ours. So that
because I fucking said so. It's so right. That's basically
yeah. So that's the grand strategy. So so I guess the grand strategy for Requeest-Idea is actually inside of Dreamcatcher itself, because the Requeest-Idea strategy is sufficient to explain us a kind of simple version of it. But it may be the case that there is a grand strategy above, but I don't think we need to do that at the moment. But anyway, that answers your question. Above strategy is grand strategy.
Seems to me like the definition of strategy, grand strategy, seems reasonably arbitrary.
It is.
Like it's not.
It is.
Yeah. It's like the level above and the level below.
Usually, grand strategy is in the world of politics, and strategy is in the world of warfare, for example.
Oh, right. Okay, so grand strategy is set by Parliament.
Yeah.
And then strategy is set by admirals.
Yeah, exactly. The chief of defense staff is the guy in charge of the strategy.
Oh, okay. Well, that's definitely not arbitrary then. Sorry.
Yeah. I was thinking. Yeah, to go back to the functionality thing. I think there's something there in terms of if you're putting an idea out, you kind of want to know what it's going to do. You don't. I agree with you. You need to know how you're going to go about building this, which is the kind of steps that are put down in most of those bullets. But we should be able to say what. It's a bit strange because it's not an app, but who are going to be the users?
It is intended to be the precursor to an app, and so all the rules of our architecture do hold here.
Yeah. So one would be to allow anyone to submit a request to the pool and have that submitted to QA, for example. So request submission.
Sorry, am I putting it?
I'm looking at your functionality on 007. You've got actors and actions. That works as well. So, for example.
Yeah, I didn't actually have actors and actions. I just had functionality, and then it's like sloppy. Like I've put the user. Like I've put the actor in brackets next to it.
Yeah. Well, we could do it in this actors and actions thing. Works. So would be. I don't know.
Well, there's QA. That's an easy one.
Say again, sorry.
Oh, under actors and actions.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. I'm trying to write down a single piece of functionality, see if this works for this sort of thing. Allows anybody to reference guideline doc. very wordy, but that equates to, now that implies the existence of the guidance doc, of course, but also says who's going to be using this guidance doc, who are writing it for. And,
yeah, okay. This was not what I had in mind for actors and actions. Let me have a shot. This was sort of how I was imagining it. Like, list out the actors and then say what they can and can't do.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it makes no sense to allow you to pull your money in the pool right now because
but
we make up the money.
Yeah.
Super ideas or outputs. Right, like this is, I think pretty quickly we can, I feel like I'm half done here, drawing a blank for the rest of the things, but like that can sort of scope out the limits of the idea pretty well, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not to throw a spanner in the works. Sorry, you were going to say something?
I don't know. No, it's agreeing.
Not to throw a spanner in the works, but then there's another type of idea like idea 6, the IPFS rewrite, which doesn't have any doesn't have any users, so that doesn't work there. You know, like it just feels like fucking QA needs a kind of a. There's gonna be like a purist, different forms for different types of request.
Yeah, very possibly.
You know, like, and this is, I don't know if you got a chance to read my ticket on request inheritance. You know, about,
no.
But it occurred to me that being able to inherit from another request is not the same as having a dependency on it. But you're saying, like, for example, I could list all the musts and coulds and shoulds of what an open source software solution is, and I could make my request inherit from that request so that anything that fulfills my request must also fulfill the parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not the same as a dependency or a target.
What would you call that then? Or just inheritance?
Inheritance, yeah. I'm absolutely not suggesting we implement it for R10. But I'm just saying that the concept is a new one. We haven't spoken about that before. I think it will save a lot of time.
Yeah.
I think.
We kind of touched on it yesterday, but only inside of the request. Remember us suggesting a request, a tactical intent 0, which is kind of global musts and coulds and so on. So that we wouldn't have to...
Right. So there's like absolute base, like it's not even a request if it doesn't have these things.
Yeah.
I guess you could define that as saying it must follow the request format.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a good idea. Just thinking about this.
And because, for example, what we would say is that your request, if you choose the application request as one of something to inherit from, then it would say that your idea needs to list the actors and the actions that are going to take place in it. So the request can have some say on what the idea needs to present, which is different to treating the idea as just a checklist of the request format. The request is saying specifically what elements it needs to see in the idea spec itself.
Yeah.
And, if you want to make a Dreamcatcher app, you've got to say actors and actions. We may include that to say incentives, actors, actions, and incentives. You may say that it has to inherit from the securities guardian. So it must not allow any securities class promises to occur within the app because it's dealing with money. And I think that allows you to say things like, the request guardian, and it's it's inherited from, or something like that, like the anti-money laundering request, or how to chuck the 10 Commandments in there, or whatever. I don't know.
I think there's two separate things there, isn't there? They're both right, though. So you got a request that is part of, or could be used in a bigger structure, and you say inherits part of its scope from something else. And the other one with the structure just strikes me that if you write a request, and it's just out there, it's not picked up in a pool, you submit it to a pool. That submission process, after that, it goes into a pool. Now, that will mean that anyone who can come along, look at that request and go, yeah, okay, I'm going to write an idea for that. It's the QA of the pool, or the guidelines of the pool, that dictates the format. So say if someone else came up with a different pool where they don't really care. Could be
I think it's the request that dictates the format of the idea, and the pool may specify a default.
Yeah,
Because look at the difference between i7 and i6. They're actually very different things, I suppose. One's a multi-user app and written using paper, and the other is a module rewrite to use or consume another module.
Yeah.
To be a protocol, and the pool couldn't possibly anticipate all the formats that are going to be required, and those two examples alone require different formats.
No, that's okay. After just thinking about it, it doesn't matter too much where it goes, because what I was thinking is, if you have two pools that both want to take the same request, but those pools have different ideas of, in this case of this request, what information that they'll be looking for in an idea to be submitted to them. So it's like guidance to the guy writing the idea. So we want to see the idea include actors and actions. But
you're saying that is included in the request.
It could be. It should be associated with the request. It could be actually inside of it. But
I think it should be inherited from
it. And what the request inherited from the pool? Sorry, didn't follow you there.
So the pool itself, for example, might accept a few base starting requests. One is, for example, the request for a multi-user interblock-based application that can be worked upon in a Dreamcatcher pool. So it would say, like, must use ambient attribution, must be open source under one of these open source licenses, must blah, 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 right? Must show actors and actions and incentives, must not be exploitable for money laundering,
Right.
And that's a base standard that when you write an app idea for a user-facing app, you can inherit from that request. And that request also includes something saying must specify actors and actions must specify that in the idea format.
Yeah, that'd work.
And I think that's pretty easily doable. We add just one more field up the top of a request, which is inheritance.
Yeah, I agree.
So we've got targets, dependencies, and inheritance. And then we have strategic intent, tactical intent, and effectively the detailed description is still the tactical intent.
Yes, it's just given more detail. Whereas tactical intent is more like a table of contents, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's something. So I'll make a note of that then in implement request inheritance. Are you feeling okay today? You look.
No, I'm not feeling that great actually, but just fatigued a bit.
Fatigued.
Yeah, this COVID thing's still hanging around me. Just comes and goes.
Would you like to defer it till another day?
I'm looking for a bit more. I'm quite keen to, at the very least, have this I11, maybe not complete, but certainly agree the sections on it.
Right. Okay. Cool. We'll just sing out when you had enough.
Yeah, we'll do. Do we add in? Right. Okay, you got implementation steps there. Is that a cut and paste of some of these sections? For example, this is essentially a list of implementation steps, just highlighted. just under.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what you got in mind. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but see, the difference is that by relating it to the musts and the coulds in a request, it I don't know how to describe what it makes me feel. Like it doesn't feel independent. It feels slaved to the request. And it also feels like, as a general format, that would be brittle because now there'd be this extra requirement on the request writer to include a part that said list your implementation steps, because it's like the request writer has enough constraint on them already, and that's kind of why I like the inheritance idea for stipulating format of the idea, because at least it's standardized, and the request writer doesn't have to worry about that. You're like, what is this thing? Is it an app? Yeah. Does it have users? Yep. Okay, use this template. And then, or inherit from this request and then add your own stuff in. So,
Yeah. I think the
but
implementation.
no, that's exactly implementation steps.
Sorry, say again?
I said what you've got there is exactly implementation steps.
Yeah. So I'm looking.
So I'll just.
Yeah, and the other thing was, do we want? Because we talked about it before. Do we want a definition of done in the idea?
I think that fuck, man, because the request is supposed to define done, but we sort of glossed over that one. Like must, should, could, and all that. It doesn't help you with the scenario that you're thinking of in your head.
Yeah.
When you decide the idea delivered or not. Now, does that belong in a request or in the idea?
I think it can't go into the request.
Because that's evolutionary?
Yeah, it steps into it steps into targeting outputs, and outputs are in an idea as well. It'd be hard to write what is done without stepping into, well, we know this is done when we've got, X. We don't know what X is because we need to keep it.
Okay, so why don't I say, I'll call this the list of integration tests.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can go through and have one or many sort of scenarios that you run through that's like, submit a request, have it bounce, fix the
Yeah.
right? You're like, when it can do this thing, and you can just list out different scenarios that to you represent the functioning of the system, because actors and actions, I mean, you can still make a system that has all the actors and does all the actions and still doesn't sort of do what the concept said.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Sort of like the integration tests are like the whole thing running as one, and then QA's job would be like, well, I'm looking at the integration tests and it looks like one of these actors, the funder, is never touched by any integration test. So how do you know that the funder is implemented correctly?
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
And so for, I guess if it was a module like I6,
Mm-hmm.
I would expect it to maybe list some integration tests would still be valid.
Mm-hmm.
Some functions that it would perform
Mm-hmm.
would be good.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the benefits over the existing implementation, like why is this improvement needed?
Yeah, I think that'd be a choice to put in. You'd probably put in the benefits as a bit of a sale to get QA the second phase of
Right,
QA.
but I mean, like, if you can't say what, like, QA might not know what the benefits are. Like, you're like, why are you doing this?
Well, exactly.
And you're like,
Yeah. So
it's better.
yeah. So you put that in there to make it easy or clear to that second stage of QA, where they're actually thinking, do we want to put money against this? So you'd likely put that into the idea. But it might not always be appropriate because, they might not have anything to compare it against. That the benefit could be because, well, yeah, for example, the benefit would be that if we have the request idea process in place, it's better than not having it and all that stuff up in the strategic intent, the why of it.
Right, so benefits should really be covered by the strategic intent.
Yeah.
Okay. So you could list the benefits for why you're doing this module rewrite.
Yeah.
But it's not a must.
Yeah.
Okay. It's starting to feel like a system now.
It does. Yeah, I think it does.
Especially like being able to inherit saves a lot of time.
I'm just looking down to see if there's any other type of bit of information in the stuff that's already written. So most of this is going to go up into. We'll strip out all the reference to the tactical intents and so on. But these are just implementation steps largely. There's some concept pieces that I've already pulled up. There's some dones which could be reworded into integration tests.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, like I feel like an asshole sort of ripping into you about the idea, but I'm like, it's just it is in the format of the request.
Yeah, no, I totally,
and we need
I totally get what you're saying.
In a format.
Yeah.
Of an idea, and I don't really know what that is, but it sounds like it's coming together what the format of an idea should be, and it sounds like it's different depending on what class of idea it is.
Yes.
See how, like, I don't think that QA is a two-stage submission process.
No?
Well, I don't think it's...
I
don't think QA has any business saying if an idea is worth doing. All QA has to do is say that it's intellectually sound. It's in the format.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And these requests that come in, QA passing your request doesn't really say much about the appropriateness of the request.
No, the second stage only kicks in if the pool decides to escrow against one of these things to get it to happen.
No, the good idea worth working on is decided by the market. That's not QA's job.
That is true, but only for forward apps, where the pool isn't actually doing any payout until it's received an output, and it's effectively buying that output.
What other kinds of apps are we doing other than Ford?
Well, we got escrow where we put the idea up and saying we're escrowing X thousand on this, and that escrow goes into goes into escrow and is automatically pulled over if someone turns up and does that. Now, if you didn't have in order to put something, put escrow against something,
Yeah.
you're essentially losing control of that money. And if you're just allowing any idea to go up just based on its formatting, you get some real wild stuff there that, the pool is just never going to be interested whether anyone actually does this.
Right, but that's fine. I think so. So there was another role that I had in mind, which was the pool admin.
Mm-hmm.
So pool admin, I think, would be the one that says, yeah, this is good or bad, or it's not worth doing. Like,
okay, well,
QA,
yeah.
I just wanted them separate, because QA is supposed to be a service or a function, and it's not to say that it's like one QA service can service multiple pools if the pools accept that QA service.
All right, so no, that's fine. So basically, I'm over indexing on QA on that one. It's
I think I've overburdened the actor. Yeah.
So if we have
tell me what is the action that actor you're describing would do?
Well, let's call him a pool admin. So a pool admin would be a bit like the guy who controls the fund for that pool. So puts in money against an idea, escrow that money against that idea, because they've got a plan about how that pool wants to put its money, or what needs to put its money into.
The pool admin doesn't control any funds. Like the funds are controlled by the individuals. That's the participation requirement to get us around the securities law.
Yeah.
You can't just put your money in the pool and then leave it there. You actually need to do something active in the project.
Yeah.
So what I think, someone has to start a pool, right? QA doesn't start pools. I think pool admin starts the pool, and then pool admin, like I can't decide if it's a good idea to say that a pool should have a top level request that it aims to satisfy, or if that's over specifying.
Or you mean like what's the theme of the pool?
The pool theme.
Yeah.
There's a big request that the pool's trying to fulfill, and this pool is an answer to that request in a way, right? And so that can be used by QA to determine, does this, under that circumstance, I'd accept that QA can either enter or remove things, but it still feels like there's a need for another role, which is like taste or style, or, I'm kicking you out of the pool just because I just don't like it. Like moderation, I suppose. Like a pool moderator is required. Why don't I call it that? Moderator.
Okay. Yeah.
I just because in my head QA QA can service multiple different pools that are all run by totally different people doing very different things, that selected QA because they trust this QA, and this QA accepts their work because it's good for its reputation, and it's not like murdering children or anything. It's something that QA is specialized in. QA needs to earn money, wants to earn attribution, so it does this work for these different pools. Then additionally, these pools can select multiple QAs, like a QA group, where people can use whichever ones they like based on their personal preference, and they're all, you get a pass from any of those QAs, or you might say you need to get a pass from 2 QAs to be in the pool. All those kinds of I just want to unbundle the actors and the pool.
Yeah, I agree with that. The bit I'm scratching my head at, which probably because my brain's not working as fast as it usually does today, but the pool itself. I mean, what we've got is a bunch of requests and ideas that an individual can come along and escrow against one of those. So effectively, that second stage is being done by the individual whose cash it is, not by any other actor in this. And that's what you're saying about the
Yeah, because there's sort of that thing, like if your idea or request doesn't get any attention, it's kind of just like we can just present a filter to you that sort of cuts off the tail.
Right.
And you got to actually actively go in there and open up the filter to be like, show me everything.
Yeah.
And, you can dig around there, but.
So there's no concept of membership. So they say a pool's got a whole bunch of ideas which is past its QA, it's happy with.
Right.
It's true that any user from anywhere in the world can rock up and put escrow against any of those ideas.
Not really. Not in the web liquidity pooling defined in idea 7, because to be allowed into the pool, you have to have passed QA on your financial status. So you need to be identified, DPL'd, KYC'd, and AML'd, and then you can do what you like.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And effectively, that's going to be the same for every pool.
Yeah. We run a very clean ship. We are not.
Yeah. So, so to escrow against any idea anywhere, a user has got to have gone through. He's got to be able to prove that background check, KYC, and so on. If you haven't done that, you can't escrow.
That's right.
Yeah. And do you need to do that repeatedly for each pool?
No. You for your identity in the Dreamcatcher network, you have to have received a badge from one of the many certifiers that are available, and then the pool needs to be accepting of that certifier to let you in the pool. Right. So a pool will list a bunch of services that they'll accept this guy's okay from tick. You go get one of those and you're in, and you can reuse that anywhere around the network.
Yeah. So essentially that is a filter, isn't it? So the equivalent of getting kicked out of a pool is essentially you're given a black mark, which filters out the contents of that pool to your search.
I don't think it should even do that. It just simply kicks your money out. You can still look and see, but you just escrow your money. Yeah. And I do believe there's a need for a moderator within the pool, because if someone starts being difficult, like saying outrageous things that are not of benefit to the pool, they need to get kicked.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yes.
Let's imagine, because it's all fucking DPL'd and you've got like passports and identification, that you probably should be a decent person.
You'd hope.
Don't be a fucking...
Yeah. Or at least if you're not, we know where you live. Okay. All right. So yes, I agree. Sorry, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole, but what I'm agreeing about is that second pass on the QA is not required. So I can strip all that out.
Okay, cool. So, where was that? Oh, here we go. As we're likely looking at a 2-stage QA. Oh man, I don't even know how to modify that.
Where are you looking?
Down the bottom, the last page.
Yep, we saw it. It's really tissues. I think we just delete that. It's only talking about the second stage, which doesn't exist.
Okay. I also think this section can be deleted as well, simply because there is an element, I think, in an idea that is reasonable to say that, look, we've got the concept down, we've got the steps to implementation down, we've got the integration tests. We don't, right? Like you can still meet some of the requirements in a request, even though you did not stipulate them explicitly in the idea document.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I'm struggling to say that there is a form of art in it, that if you made an idea and it was tightly defined and compact, it is using your intelligence sometimes possible for it to satisfy some other request that is not explicitly mentioned here. That you can be like, okay, if you did all that, then definitely you would have demonstrated self-improvement. So, you know, I think we can define this idea in a way that has integration tests that show self-improvement, which would pass the request.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so I'll delete R10.
Yep.
The bottom. Yep. I also I know you're not feeling very well, but you kind of snuck in two circular references there, like you pointed at the document itself.
Yes.
Which is sneaky.
Yes. Well, we are going to apply this document to the self-improvement process, which this document is going to produce.
My head has not processed that well, and I think that I find it easier to think about the process as already running, and that if we improve this doc through that process, that will be one of the self-improvement loops. But it's too much to think about it simultaneously self-improving and specifying.
Yes.
I think the self-improvement is cycles, and we're in cycle 1.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. I'm happy with that.
This, I think, you were replying to the format of the request, and I think that the intellectual content of this is covered by if we fulfill that first half of this doc.
Yes.
Right,
yeah,
like the actions part, I think, covers that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, okay. Now, what do we do about the loop that happens when? So we wrote R10, we're like, oh, this is great and shiny and, you know, pure and all these things. And then someone writes an idea and then we're like, shit, we missed something.
This is what this part here, this call out. It doesn't come up with an answer to that one, just points it out. So request may have missed an opportunity, an idea spots.
But that sort of happens all the time. Like, if an idea is independent, it probably solves more than just that request. Like, it's almost impossible to hit a request and only a request.
Yes.
Almost certainly you've overshot it somewhere just because of something in the nature of what solutions are. That solutions have to fit the laws of nature. Problems don't.
Yeah.
and like to make something that is nice and tidy and is a good reusable solution, I think I don't even know how to describe it, but it will definitely overshoot what the pure request was, just by the way nature is, it seems almost.
Yeah. Now the question is there a way for the idea, if it spots an extension to the request, does it just go ahead and make
That's
that?
probably the author's job to PR against the request, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the idea's job to say, like an idea is trying to be standalone and pure, and it's sort of trying to act like the request doesn't even exist.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Why did you want to reduce QA for Stubs?
Well, the stubs are. Well, it depends what you mean by a stub. So, what would be the minimum stub idea for one of these app ideas?
One-liner, just a one-liner, like.
So, would that pass QA? I mean, we're QA, so we could just say, yeah, it does.
I wouldn't.
So,
but I mean, what I'm asking is, what benefit were you seeing allowing Stubs in the pool?
to test the process through without having to, because some of the ideas for these apps are going to be fairly chunky, and it would be good to test.
Maybe what you're asking for is a two-stage pool, where you're saying here's like the dust pool, which has very light entry requirements, and then here's the, there's a subsection of that called the quality pool.
We've already got that though. We've got that's defined by inside and outside of the pool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, but the idea was that you can't fund dust, but if you had a two-stage pool, you could. Like if someone chucks in a one-liner and you're like, ooh, that's actually quite good. Even though I admit that one-liner leaves a lot of shit unspecified that might not be what I want, but I would put money against that if it passed QA to the quality pool.
Okay, and that would be a lower standard of QA.
It'd be practically non-existent. It would basically be just don't say anything racist, or don't swear too much, and safe for work and kid friendly, and then that's it. You're in the pool.
Yeah,
like basically a spam email filter would do it just fine.
Yeah, I was thinking, why couldn't you allow an individual to fund dust?
Because you would still have to put the securities guardian over the top of it so that a promise wasn't made.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no reason why not. We should not be associated with people freely funding dust.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't block it, but we shouldn't be associated with it, because that's where the heartache will come from, where people will be like, oh, I thought you meant this. No, I didn't. Now we could get around that whole problem and just say that you can put the money there to show interest, but it represents no commitment whatsoever other than an upvote or a like, and other than an indication that there is money in the system, and you forego your ability to spend that money elsewhere to park it on top of this idea, so that if someone turned that into a fundable idea, a fundable request, you would very likely put your money on it.
Yeah.
It's not. It is giving you some. I would get a buzz out of that, if I just chuck down a one-liner and then someone's like, hey, man, that's actually fucking cool. Here's $1,000.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't think it was that good, but tell me more. I also don't have the fucking time, but, tell me more. I can at least write a paragraph on it, and then, it's just, honestly, man, just having a friend or a fan or someone else who just thinks like, yeah, dude, you should do that. Like, that is worth so much when you're trying to, you have so many ideas just get crushed underfoot. Where everyone's like, oh, no one will go for that. That's a stupid idea. But is it though? Like, who are you to say, really?
Yeah. So the only thing we've got to really worry about is that the securities.
Yeah, and I think if we're saying that in the Dreamcatcher system, you can't actually fund dust. You can pool against dust, but there's no way that you can use your money to indicate interest and preference. But there's no way that money can change hands. It's always your money, and you can always pull it out. So that's definitely not a security. Now, a curly question for you, Maxwell. How far does our reach extend in this network? How far does the securities guardian operate?
I was thinking something along those lines. You could say if...
Does it operate on all money in the system? Or is it only within the walls of our pool that it would operate? Fuck, man.
So if someone to fund a piece of dust that clearly broke securities law,
right? Would we get in trouble?
Yeah. Well, what if we never knew about it? We weren't either parties. I think
the defining argument is who ran the gateway that converted the money into the Dreamcatcher network, and I think it's the gateway that gets to say what the rules are. So if you put your US dollars on Ethereum into our gateway across to the Dreamcatcher, we're going to apply our rules to you. Like, that's why you would want to park your money with us, because you know that no one can cash it back out of the gateway unless they've followed all the legal requirements that we have, and that no laws have been broken while the money was being used. So that's a valuable thing. Now, you want to set up a black gateway, fine, right? But we'll not let that money mix in with ours, because that's not who we are. Now, it's not to say that it's not us in disguise running the black gateway, but the point is, and it's not to say that we won't make the software available so anyone can do whatever they want. That's not the point. The point is, I do believe that it is within our purview to manage or restrict the operations that are possible if you come through our money gateway. Would you agree?
I would. I think that's probably the only practical point where you could apply.
Right.
Because outside of that, you're not going to be able to point your finger at anyone. So if there's funding of dust done, I mean, you go after the, I don't know, don't think you could go after us if we didn't know about it. I had no intention of ever having anything to do with it. It just doesn't appear anywhere. It would only be the actual people doing it. And to ensure that it's not security, which is stuff that we want to be able to do because we do want to, run this pool in this way. Then it's almost like it's good money and unknown money, isn't there?
Yeah, all our operations, we want to exceed current regulatory standards, like exceed them, and do so with zero cognitive overhead to our participants, because once your money's in this automated system, we've encoded all that rules and compliance in there, and you can't do anything that is illegal. So, that frees you up to just try whatever you like,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that works.
I think that's basically a good vision for the future. Compliance with no fucking thought. Setting up a business where it pays GST and VAT the instant someone buys something from you, and you don't have to think about it. It's stupid to even allow people to break tax law. It's the government's money. Why were there not controls put on it so that you couldn't commit any kind of tax fraud? It just happened. You just paid your tax. It just was just part of the system. The fact that you get to hold your tax money and then the government says, hand it over, and you're like, ah!
Well, yeah, it's like pay as you earn does that, but not everyone only pays as you earn.
Yeah, but it's also the onus is on the employer now to do the calculation, but still it gives the employee a fairly automated sense that they're just it worked. But then what gets me is you still got to submit your fucking tax form at the end of the year and do the calculation anyway. And you're like, well, you fucking did it. You knew everything there was in this equation. Why do I have to fucking make a form again?
Yeah.
God. Sorry. Anyway,
if it's all right, I'm going to knock off at this point, I think.
Yeah, man. No worries.
I'm going to... shall we keep working inside of this